I love ZZZ's roster. So far, it's incredibly strong. From Evelyn to Ellen, this game is full of all these crisp, stylish character kits that really challenge you to think on your feet. But Yixuan, she may be the best designed character we've seen yet, thanks to how she thrives on your ability to read a fight and adapt on the fly, not just how well you can optimize. Yixuan is easily one of ZZZ's most complex characters. She's got the biggest moveset, the most versatile resource pool, but most importantly, the most flexible moment-to-moment gameplay thanks to how everything about her kit revolves around this combination of skill expression and decision making. And that laser focus on enabling player choice allows for such a diverse playstyle, but the coolest thing about Yixuan is over time, everyone's gonna wind up playing her slightly differently. Because what really makes Yixuan shine is the fact that she heavily rewards game knowledge and adaptability just as much, if not more, than pure efficiency. So think of this video as less of a guide, more of a discussion, because really I'm here to talk about some of the design decisions that make Yixuan incredible. But along the way, I'm also going to show you a few of the tricks I've added to my Yixuan's tool belt. The kind of tech that will help you step up your neutral game, not just your stun DPS, from ways to boost your adrenaline generation to her secret parry tech, to why you'd be crazy to ignore her Rasengan outside of stun, and of course, I'm gonna show you how stylish she can be.
Leave it to me. Cycle of yin and yang. Up the creek. Evo, shall be purged. Allow me. Stay focused. Evo, shall be purged.
Hi, hello, Hecky G everyone, call me Casual. It's so good to be back, and what better way to come back than to talk about one of the few characters in this game I would say is potentially a must-pull. Because Yixuan is really the full package in a way that only a few characters come even close to. I mean, when Hoyo said they were aiming to design a martial artist that married offense and defense, I'm not gonna lie, I was mad skeptical about how effectively Yixuan would wind up delivering on that in a way that really made her worth the spot on our accounts, especially after being so disappointed in Miyabi. But I gotta be real, they cooked, especially where her unique resource Adrenaline is concerned, because that could have easily just been Diet Special Energy. But instead, Adrenaline has wound up being one of the best evolutions of this game's core combat mechanics we've seen since launch. And honestly, the fact that we're getting a character with this degree of nuance and flexibility in their kit this early in the game's life cycle is insane. I know some people have described Yixuan as hard to play. I mean, she's got a lot going on, so she can look really daunting at first glance, and I know we've got a lot of newer players in the community joining up after 2.0, so I'm going to try to keep this as accessible as possible. But I am going to be moving fairly quickly, so by all means, if you got any questions about Yixuan, feel free to ask down below, and I'll try to respond to as many as I can. But really, even though at face value she can be a bit daunting, I think her unique mechanics, especially Adrenaline, actually make Yixuan one of the easier characters to pilot, as long as you have a cohesive understanding of her entire kit, not just her most basic rotations. Because unlike characters like Evelyn, for example, Yixuan has so many different viable sources of damage, so many win conditions thanks to her multiple ults, her Rasengan and whatnot, that even if you're out of position, even if your resources aren't in the perfect place, you can adapt on the fly really smoothly. And the fact that she's so adaptable, so flexible, is what makes her one of the best characters in the game to me personally, because that adaptability is what gives us room for creativity in combat. The sheer amount of design space dedicated to skill expression really enables you as a player to mold your Yixuan to your preferences instead of just following the same rotations everyone else is. But even though she's incredible, like I said, one of the best characters in the game, no doubt, I don't know if I'd say she's my favorite, thanks to a few inescapable problems kind of holding her back. But you'll have to stick around to the end to hear about those, because first we have to talk about how Yixuan embodies the most important word when it comes to any live service game, not just Zenless: curiosity. You see, personally, I don't care much about damage output or meta viability. In a game like this, where success is much more about your skill than your stats, what actually matters to me most is the moveset. Is it satisfying? Does it branch in interesting ways? How well does it synergize with the rest of the roster? And most importantly, does it make me curious? Because let's be real, humans as a species, we aren't great at a lot of things, but one of the few things we tend to be pretty good at is pattern recognition. And that can be kind of a double-edged sword at times. Because we're so good at recognizing patterns, once we fully map something out in our heads, it can start to lose the spark that makes it interesting pretty quickly. Don't get me wrong, satisfying gameplay is great and all, but that kind of satisfaction tends to fade with repetition, which is why characters like Yixuan that inspire curiosity aren't just nice to have, they're kind of crucial in my eyes, especially for a game like this that wants you to sink so much time into it. In a multiplayer game, other people fuel our fun, our curiosity, because you never know what's going to happen next because people are inherently unpredictable to an extent. But with a single player game like this, the game itself has to pick up the slack and keep you guessing, but AI can only do so much, which is why mechanics that reward experimentation on your end, not just efficiency, are kinda everything to me. If a character's kit, or if combat as a whole becomes too predictable, if you're not making unique decisions that leave you with questions about what could have been possible if you had made different ones, boredom isn't just inevitable, it's easy to fall into, cause to paraphrase my guy Alain de Botton, we get bored of what we understand too well. And that's what makes Yixuan so exciting. Her kit's deep, highly flexible, it's full of all this utility beyond pure damage, and even now, weeks after she released, I'm still asking new questions. Sometimes those questions are about what's possible within the context of the game or her kit, like wondering if the fact that there's a slight delay before Yixuan launches her parry means you can leverage that delay to trigger one even when she's off field. The answer is yes, by the way, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But sometimes that question is simply about what's possible for you as a player, like mastering the timing for her various parries and perfect dodges and learning when and where to integrate them for the sake of your playstyle. Yixuan's gameplay is rooted in this crazy loop of curiosity, discovery, and satisfaction, and it's a big part of what makes her so damn fun. It's what gives her a lot of replayability thanks to all the decision making it leads to. For example, Yixuan's Auric Array. It's her unique dodge attack where she lays down this field of ink which draws enemies towards the center while recharging her adrenaline. It's got a non-enhanced version that doesn't provide any iframes and generates less resources, as well as an enhanced version that generates more adrenaline while triggering Witch Time, or, Vital View for those of you who don't have Bayo brain rot, but the enhanced version is where things start to get interesting. You see, if you cancel out of the enhanced version with a dodge or something similar, you keep the damage and the vital view, so enemies inside the ink field will stay slowed while the damage ticks away in the background, but you sacrifice the adrenaline buildup, creating a clear choice. Finish your Auric Array without canceling it to generate more resources, which will allow Yixuan to use her specials more frequently, or sacrifice it for the sake of the background damage, or to take advantage of the fact that the enemy is locked down by vital view to sneak in extra attacks. And that's far from the only decision Yixuan's kit leads you to make. You'll be deciding whether to go for 3 EX specials to fill your technique meter, or maybe cancel the sequence early to build up more adrenaline. Based on the situation, sometimes you'll use a Rasengan for damage, sometimes as a defensive tool. And in between all the parry timings and perfect dodge opportunities and how they feed back into her adrenaline, enemy attacks become less of a threat and more of a potential opportunity. It's that kind of reactive, in-the-moment gameplay that makes Yixuan hard to put down. Her moveset really invites you to think on your feet, to improvise, to test boundaries, and I love how adrenaline is the connective tissue that ties it all together. For those who are unfamiliar, Yixuan is ZZZ's first rupture unit, who uses adrenaline as her primary resource as opposed to special energy. With the main difference between the two being how you interact with them, it's gonna be really interesting to see how that potentially changes in the future, because what's really unique here is so much of what makes adrenaline tick is seemingly tied to Yixuan's kit specifically, not necessarily adrenaline as a mechanic in general. Starting with the fact that, as I'm sure many of you have noticed, Yixuan is the only character so far with 2 ultimates. A normal one gained by building up decibels the same way any other character does, and another she charges in correlation to the amount of adrenaline she spends, shown by this meter under her health bar. And at first, I was somewhat worried that the second ultimate would wind up being more flash than substance, just another damage nuke type beat, right? But it's yet another surprisingly flexible element of her kit. Sometimes you'll absolutely use it like a standard ult to pile on as much damage as possible during stun, but like I said at the top, Yixuan has so many viable sources of damage, you won't ruin your run if you use it for utility instead, as long as you're mindful about it. Whether that's for breaking miasma shields, taking care of large groups, or forcibly interrupting enemies. Plus that enhanced Auric Array I mentioned earlier, the cool thing is this second ult is how you actually gain access to it. You gain 1 charge for the array per ult, so in a really interesting way, the ult kinda indirectly contributes to your adrenaline gain, creating this fun feedback loop. You spend adrenaline to get access to the ult, then you use the ult to get access to your enhanced auric array, then you use the auric array for more adrenaline, and then you just go from there. It's really fun. Honestly, I love what the second ult does for your gameplay loop because it makes every use of your specials more meaningful. There's always multiple factors to consider when it comes to spending your adrenaline, and that's why I'm really curious how future units are going to build on all this groundwork being laid by Yixuan. Will all Rupture units have 2 ults? Will they all have so many ways to battery their adrenaline? I hope so, because I mean, at least for me, a lot of what makes adrenaline the powerhouse that it is, what makes it so much fun to play around, is the fact that Yixuan has so many ways to generate it. She has like 7 different sources, which allows you to use your adrenaline much more aggressively than special energy, really enabling you to more comfortably look at your special attacks from the perspective of the utility they can provide as opposed to pure DPS. And I love how much of that is focused around rewarding game knowledge as well as your ability to react to enemy attacks. But again, a lot of that is tied to Yixuan's kit specifically through her core passive and whatnot, so who knows how that could change for future Rupture units. Yixuan is an excellent base to work from though, because the fact that she has so many sources of adrenaline generation combined with the way those sources play off of the game's core combat mechanics can really change how you look at fights in interesting ways. Like, for example, among other things, Yixuan gains adrenaline every single time she parries an attack using her special, on top of generating a decent amount of meter for her second ult. The problem is though, normally you're only allowed to trigger a single parry per attack. Whether it's Yixuan's or a standard defensive assist, you kinda gotta pick one. And normally, that's a fairly ironclad rule, with the closest we tend to get to breaking it being a DP assist, which for those unfamiliar is when you dodge counter and parry an attack at the same time. Even that can be a bit tricky though, because the game really prefers you don't do things like that. And normally, as soon as you initiate a dodge counter, you lose the opportunity to parry, and vice versa. But there is a very small window where you can sneak the dodge counter in and still land your parry before the flash disappears. And we're going to circle back to DP assists in a moment, because Yixuan actually looks at those a bit differently than other characters. But if the game prefers you don't do things like dodge counter and parry an attack at the same time, it downright hates the idea of you doubling up on parries. But I did notice something while juggling that allows you to pull off some cheeky little tech. You see, Yixuan's special parry looks and feels borderline instantaneous because you can cancel into it at almost any time, and as soon as you press the button, she's effectively safe. Plus, the timing for that parry is really forgiving. Too forgiving, quite frankly, which I'll talk about later because it's part of what ruins Homegirl a little bit, but part of the reason the parry is so forgiving is when an attack that can be parried comes in range, Yixuan actually abbreviates her special attack animation, cutting off a few of the startup frames, which is what makes it feel so responsive because it allows you to smoothly parry right up until that last possible moment. As you can see here, when Yixuan isn't parrying an attack, she very clearly crouches down first before leaping upwards with the wing. However, if you wait until that last moment to parry, she skips the crouch entirely. So if there isn't an attack to parry in front of you, you want to be mindful that there's a brief delay before Yixuan launches her special attack, which for the sake of juggling means you have to make sure the enemy is either at a certain height above Yixuan before using her special, or use an off-field unit like Pulchra to keep the enemy airborne while you prep the special. But for the sake of general combat, you can actually make that delay work for you. Let's say an enemy has a really rapid attack string, like Priest for example. If you initiate Yixuan's parry, then immediately swap to another character for the defensive assist before Yixuan's parry animation starts, the defensive assist will take priority over Yixuan's parry, and instead of skipping the crouch, Yixuan will complete the full animation, allowing her to parry the next incoming attack even though she's off field at the time, enabling her to generate that extra adrenaline from a successful special parry on top of getting the free adrenaline she already gains from the defensive assist parry with your other character. This is really fun, looks really cool, and feels really satisfying thanks to how it rewards you for getting familiar enough with the timing for both the enemy's attacks as well as your animations to consistently manage it. But with a little practice, you can do something even better. As mentioned, normally you have to choose between a defensive assist and Yixuan's parry. One will always take priority over the other, unless you match the timing so at the precise moment the enemy's attack connects with Yixuan parry, it also connects with a defensive assist, enabling you to generate that extra adrenaline for Yixuan while simultaneously bringing your next character on field off of a single attack. It's a little tricky, we are talking about borderline frame perfect timing after all, but I am not the best gamer in the world, and if I can do it, you absolutely can too. It mainly just takes practice and familiarizing yourself with the timing for when the enemy's attack will connect with Yixuan's parry as well as the startup animation for the defensive assist. Just remember you gotta factor in that delay, and if you use your defensive assist too early, it will take priority and Yixuan will be too late for her parry to trigger. What I do is wait just a beat longer than I think I need to before triggering the defensive assist, and that helps a bit with consistency. There's no real trick to it though, just like a DP assist, it simply requires practice and building familiarity with the enemy movesets. Since we're talking about DP assists though, it's worth remembering that Yixuan's dodge counter is, it's nice and all, but the dodge counter isn't really Yixuan's priority. The perfect dodge itself is, because thanks to her core passive, perfect dodges generate extra adrenaline for her. So instead of going for that DP assist, for most players it will be much easier and more consistent, I think, to simply dodge with Yixuan, skip the counter entirely, and just go straight into the parry with your next character. And so even if you don't want to sweat and stack multiple parries on top of each other, just that little change to how you use your Yixuan, adding a perfect dodge before you parry, can double the adrenaline she gains after every successful parry. But outside of all the extra value Yixuan herself gets out of her moveset, one of the things I love most about her kit is everything it enables for the rest of your team. We're going to talk about her Rasengan in a moment because this thing is nasty, but since we were already talking about Yixuan's parry, have any of you messed around with how great it is for countering red parry flashes? Of course, we see these red flashes when an enemy launches an attack you can't parry, usually because you need a character with an evasive assist, like Pulchra for example, or because you spent all of your assist points. You'll see a lot of these red flashes in endgame activities in particular, and Yixuan is going to be one of your go-to options whenever you do, because her parry is one of the only attacks in the entire game that can negate a red flash so you don't have to dodge, while potentially interrupting the enemy as well. Thanks to this though, you can also leverage Yixuan's special to more safely trigger what I think of as a reverse DP assist. You see, if you swap while being attacked with a red flash, your next character will come on field using a perfect dodge, so if you see a red flash, don't necessarily look at that as a problem. It can be a great opportunity to swap characters if you're ready for it. You can even swap quickly enough to be able to trigger both of your character's dodge counters off of a single red flash. Unlike a parry though, that kind of swap can be a bit risky because you don't have any protection after it ends. But because Yixuan's parry has the ability to interrupt attacks the same way a defensive assist does, you can get way more leeway to sneak another character on field and get the ball rolling. Xingyi in particular loves this, because one of the biggest problems with her kit is getting to her third basic attack both quickly and safely, and a well-timed parry from Yixuan allows her to do both very easily. All you gotta do is swap at the precise moment the enemy's attack connects with Yixuan's special, and your next character will come on field using their perfect dodge. But that's not the only part of Yixuan's kit characters like Xingyi benefit from, and honestly, what we're about to discuss next is half the reason this video exists, because I was actually working on a lighter guide, but I kept hearing people say, don't use Cloudshaper, ignore it, gotta stun the enemy first, and I was out here all like,
what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Because Cloudshaper is one of the best tools in Yixuan's entire kit. You're telling me you're only using it when enemies are stunned? Come on, son. Like, yeah, sure, outside of stun, you are missing out on Cloudshaper's 30% innate damage buff. Probably Yixuan's extra 15% crit from one of her ults, on top of the fact that, yeah, it can drain a decent amount of adrenaline. And all those factors mean that in a lot of other gacha games, using Cloudshaper probably would be a bad idea outside of stun, because it is very clearly designed to be used as a DPS tool. But in practice, thanks to how all of this game's mechanics talk to each other so well, it's got so much value beyond your damage output that if you're not taking advantage of that, it really feels like you're missing out on an insane amount of Yixuan's moment-to-moment potential. It's great for grouping, its built-in invincibility makes it the perfect panic button, and because it's a ranged heavy attack, you can use it for ult cancels just like Yixuan's 5th basic. Not to mention everything it can do for your team, which is really what I want to highlight here, because if nothing else, everyone should absolutely be leaning into the free Vital View. You see, not only is Cloudshaper cheaper than a standard EX special, but if you time things just right, so Yixuan pulls back to start casting the orb at the precise moment an attack lands, not only does that trigger a perfect dodge, giving her free adrenaline, which makes Cloudshaper even more resource efficient, but it triggers Vital View, and a stronger version of it than you get from Auric Array. Auric Array only gives you Vital View within the bounds of the field on the ground, and Yixuan is vulnerable afterwards if you swap, while Cloudshaper gives you the same kind of global Vital View an Evasive Assist does, and keeps Yixuan safe while she's off field. Now, this is likely because Cloudshaper is a stationary attack, and without the ability to trigger Vital View, it would be all too easy for some enemies to move out of range, but for some wild reason, we're not locked into the animation at all, making Cloudshaper simultaneously one of the best offensive and defensive tools in the entire game. Like here, in this this example, not only was the Cloudshaper able to perfectly top off my technique points without wasting the extra adrenaline a standard special would have, I was able to use the opening I created to safely sneak in Pan, quick assist back into Yixuan, and still have time to dodge counter the second part of the Marionette's attack for some extra resources. And don't even get me started on how much characters like Qingyi love this, cause if your timing is on point and you swap her on field at the exact same time Yixuan starts casting, Qingyi has more than enough time to initiate her BA3 from scratch. Plus, depending on the attack, this is an easy way to guarantee she gets max stacks of her debuff without having to worry about the enemy moving and whiffing her enhanced basic. I can't say it enough. Cloudshaper is capital B, broken. It's too good, honestly, which is kind of the root of Yixuan's biggest problems, which we're about to discuss, but before we get there, if you're having trouble with the timing for the perfect dodge, I've actually got a little tip for you. You see, you can cancel in the Cloudshaper at practically any time in your basic combo, and if you hold down the input during attacks that can't interrupt, like a parry or a dodge counter for example, it'll start at the very next available frame. So in a quietly fun way, Yixuan actually punishes messy inputs, because you gotta be mindful you don't fat finger Cloudshaper accidentally and waste adrenaline. Because of this though, you can actually game the system a little bit. If you lead with the dodge counter, then you just keep holding down the attack button. As soon as the dodge counter ends, Yixuan will immediately shift into Cloudshaper without leaving a single gap where she's vulnerable. And this works for all attacks that Yixuan's Cloudshaper can't interrupt. So if an enemy is pressuring you with a string of attacks, all you gotta do is dodge the first one, then hold basic to go into Cloudshaper, and that will keep you safe from the rest, which of course also makes it very easy to safely trigger the perfect dodge in Vital View. And the fact that you can buffer your Cloudshaper for safety like this and Yixuan will stay invulnerable throughout the entire animation, regardless if you whiff the perfect dodge or not, is part of what makes this kind of invaluable as a panic button. And the fact that Yixuan has this level of nuance throughout her entire kit really makes her feel like she was designed from the ground up to inspire us to experiment, to give players such a high ceiling to reach for that you'll get potentially dozens upon dozens of hours of fun out of her finding your own personal playstyle. I'm not saying she's gonna be fun forever, this is a gacha game after all, right? And Yixuan has her limits, but the way she stretches them and the way all the utility in her kit enables so many gameplay options, not just for her, but for your team, is gonna give her a lot of long-term value, a lot of replayability. And honestly, I think she and Ellen Prime both say a lot about the future the devs are building towards. Because in my mind, 2.0 as a whole wasn't necessarily a groundbreaking update, but it was an incredibly important foundational one. I think it was a big step in setting the tone and laying the building blocks for what the devs see as ZZZ's new identity in the wake of all the changes we've seen since launch. And Yixuan honestly feels like a statement, a flag in the ground, saying that yeah, they can deliver this level of depth, nuance, and fun in a single character kit without shattering the game balance or making her too reliant on her dupes. But perhaps most importantly, Yixuan kind of feels like a declaration of intent that we have not seen anything yet, because if this is the kind of moment-to-moment decision-making a character is offering at the start of year 2, who are we looking at a year from now? But that's enough of me gassing our girl up. It's time to talk about the problem. The number one reason Yixuan may be one of the best characters in the game, but she's not quite my favorite. That crown still belongs very firmly to Evelyn, and the worst part of this is, it's exactly what I was afraid of as soon as Hoyo started talking about how Yixuan was a Void Hunter level unit just like Miyabi. And I'm gonna try to keep this brief because I could go on about this all day because this is a problem in so many games, but the big issue with Yixuan's design is the lack of risk to offset all of her rewards. Just like Miyabi, Yixuan is a little too strong and a little too easy to pilot, and it just makes her a bit less satisfying to play as a result. Like her parry, for example, right? It's great and all, it's cool that we have this, but the kind of shitty thing is, Yixuan is invulnerable the entire time she uses it, from the second you press the button all the way until the animation ends, regardless if you whiff the parry or not. Worst case is, you whiff the parry, you don't get the adrenaline refund, which, you know, isn't ideal, of course, but you can generate adrenaline so quickly and consistently that's more or less a non-issue, and the window for the parry is so generous anyway that it's almost hard to miss as long as you're not mashing. And I've actually been working on a video about this in the background, but the thing about a good parry is a lot of the satisfaction from successfully landing one, at least to me, comes from knowing how easy it would be to fail and how punishing it would be if you did, which is why Yanagi still has the best parry in the entire game, thanks to the fact that it not only requires more precision and thought every time you use it, but the risk is much higher whenever you do. She certainly doesn't get the same iframes Yixuan does, where Yixuan will not only negate whatever attack connects with her parry, whatever comes next doesn't matter either, because her iframes extend to the follow-up attack too, which doesn't even cost any additional resources. Whereas with Yanagi, not only is she more vulnerable both before and after her parry because she can't cancel into it nearly as freely as Yixuan, her parry only negates a single hit, so multi-hit attacks are much more of a concern and often require a well-timed dodge immediately following a successful parry to keep you safe. On top of the fact that Yanagi's parry is tied to her stance switching, so you always have to take into account which stance she's in and how that affects her positioning and the attacks to follow. Plus, the way her stance switching works, if you do it too much for the sake of using the parry, you actually kind of hurt Yanagi's electro buildup and damage output, so you have to be kind of mindful about that. Yixuan's parry is fun and all, but personally, it's already a bit stale because of how easy it is to me. And honestly, I'm worried future characters will have similar problems. And part of that concern comes from all this game's visual clarity issues, because I imagine that's part of why this is so easy too, for offsetting those. I know that has to be a factor in why Yixuan has so many iframes. I mean, I'd bet that's why she's invulnerable the entire time she's casting Cloudshaper, and not just during a startup or something more reasonable. I get that Hoyo is trying to balance this game's difficulty and how demanding it can be of players' skill while keeping it accessible, but this is one of those areas where I feel like the balance is tipped too far in the wrong direction. Because all of Yixuan's specials are so ridiculously strong, from her parry to her Cloudshaper, the lack of any risk while using them just makes her feel kind of unbalanced, and like I said, drains some of the satisfaction out of every successful parry. Honestly, a big part of what makes Evelyn the most fun character in the game is how challenging she can be to play effectively. Like, landing perfect dodges with her special can be more than a bit tricky because you can't cancel into it off of any attack, and whiffing it can be incredibly punishing, not just because Evelyn is fairly vulnerable before and after using it, but because the extra meter a perfect dodge generates can be crucial for ensuring her resources are where they need to be for your next DPS phase. Honestly, give me a Rupture version of Evelyn, and that will be the best character in the entire game, and it probably won't be particularly close. Like, oh, if that's Orpheus, I won't know what to do with myself. But that's a conversation for another day, and as much as Yixuan's ease of access does make her a bit less fun and less rewarding than she could be otherwise, everything she says about the direction the game is headed has me more excited than ever about the future. I love how she challenges you to change the way you look at combat, how she encourages you to play smarter, not harder, and I love how she's the perfect example of everything I was hoping Zenless would become. A game that truly gives you the creative space to fall in love with the combat itself, not just the rewards or your clear times. So look, I know it's been a minute since my last proper video, but yeah, I'm thinking I'm back. I can't promise I won't have to take another hiatus at some point, because caring for elderly family members with, rather serious health complications just makes life kinda beyond unpredictable on a day-to-day basis. But I spent a lot of time over the past couple of months dotting the I's, crossing the T's around the house, making sure they have everything they need, and things have finally calmed down enough for me to find the time to edit. So, a million thank yous to every single person in my community who has been so incredibly supportive and patient over the past couple of months. I've got a lot of content. There's lots that I've been plugging away at in the background that I'm so excited to share with you. If this was your first time joining us, hey, welcome. Maybe check out one of my combo mats or my discussion about combo tech, because around here we play for the love of the game, not just the grind, and certainly not the gamba. We'll leave the min-maxing and the spreadsheets at the door and embrace the gameplay-driven fun, because, it's certainly not the only way to enjoy yourself, but at least in my opinion, with games like this in particular, it's one of the best ones. So if you like what you see, if you learned something new today, if you had fun, please leave a like on the video. It's one of the best ways you can let me know you want to see more, and if you really loved it, maybe subscribe and join the Filthy Casual crew. Thanks again for joining me, stay tuned, and I hope to see you back here sometime very soon.